Well, actually, the background was here, right here in this house, in a studio, and I think that's, I don't know if that's the part of the frame, but they were all, I met them at the MO Club, and we sat at a table, and you know, people like Howard Turpning, I had been a fan of his for many, many years, and I had heard, you know, I knew some of these people, I knew of them, and I'm sitting there, and I was thinking about a painting that was done of the Masters by, can't think of his name, I won't go into it, but, and I thought, I would love to do a painting of all these people. And I asked them if I could paint them, I'll do a picture of all of them. And they said, sure. So I got a camera, and we got together, and I shot everybody. I think we shot most of them individually, and then put them together. And I've got a sketch in the other room of the first one, you know, the first effort to do this. And then Howard wasn't in the painting originally, but then he said he'd like to be in it, so I added him to the picture, and somebody else too. But anyway, it was just an opportunity to meet some of the fine, fine artists, people whose work I had admired for a long time. And I just wanted to do the painting. And they all agreed to it, so I went ahead and did it. And it was fun. I wasn't thinking of any kind of success, and when I finished the painting, everybody seemed to like it, so I gave it to the MO Club. And because that's, you know, where I met them in the first place. So, and I feel that way all the time. Every time I think of, I have to say this because it's the truth. We moved to Oregon, or to Tucson, Arizona, from Oregon, and you know, I was raised in Wisconsin, the Mississippi River, and then in California, we lived at the ocean in Santa Monica. It's on fire now, I think. And then we moved up to the Oregon coast, and we were right on the ocean there. And then we came here. And I never wanted to live in a desert, and I never cared about cactus plants, and I wanted water, and there weren't any. And so I thought, I can't stand here, I can't live here. Well, then I met, I think first Bill Mooney, and then some of the others, they took me over to the MO Club, and I met this group. And that was the first time I was sitting there with all those people, and I thought, God, these are people who I really, really admire, and they all live here. So then I kind of changed my mind about how much I didn't want to live here. And it was the MO Club that made that true, and it was those people particularly, because they were some very good artists, a lot of them, and interesting people, and they had a sense of humor, and they were fun to be with, and they're talking. And so it made, all of a sudden my life changed, and it became important that I live here with these people. I still think, in the back of my mind, I always thought, well, I'd like to move back to Oregon, but not now. And in California, I lived in California for 35 years, and I loved it, but not now. And I thought, well, you could go to Wisconsin. I think, well, it's nice in the summer and the fall, but not now. And so sometimes I think, well, where would you like to live? You can live anywhere you want to. And you know, now I'm a single person. I want that, but I can live anywhere I want to. I don't know where I want to live. You know, I can't imagine wanting to go to the trouble of moving now. Publishers, and I called one of the publishers. This is probably a couple of years ago now. And I said, I've noticed your books on the stands, and I did a lot of them for you, and I did like 70-some books for you and then some others. And I think I can do better than what you've got on the stand, so I'd like to do some of your books for you. He says, well, do you do them on the computer? I said, no, I just paint them. He says, well, we don't do it that way anymore. And I said, I understand that, but I think I could do them better than what you've got. And they said, oh, we don't do it that way anymore. I said, well, I understand, keep repeating myself, but I think I could do something that would be better. And he says, well, what do you charge? I said, I'll make a deal with you. I'll do the first one free. And if it doesn't outsell your other books, fine. If it does outsell your other books, we'll decide on a price. And he said, well, we don't do it that way anymore. And I said, but if I did it for nothing and it, so, he says, yeah, but that's not, we don't do it like that. I said, okay, and I hung up. And I realized that I'm not going to change the world. This is the way they do things now. They don't want illustration anymore. Now, I love illustration. I've talked to Howard Turpning a number of times. I said, do you miss illustration? He said, no. He paints mainly Indians, Plains Indians, and he's a wonderful painter in that. But he doesn't miss illustration, but I miss it all the time. So I've written books and just to illustrate them. I've never gotten them published because all the books I've done have close to 100 paintings in them, and nobody wants to perform those kinds of things. It costs a lot of money to print them. And so I think I'm just going to do it as a hobby. I keep writing books and doing illustrations. And so all of the paintings that I do, all of the paintings that I do, I've been a series now on mythology, and they're all stories. And the ones that aren't stories, I make up stories for. In fact, I often now hang a chain on the side of a frame with a story of the paintings, whatever I did, because I enjoyed doing the stories as much as the paintings. And I think, I don't know if this is of great interest, and if it's not, stop me. But all I want to do, see, I for so many years been doing all these book covers and everything, I usually had models and did photographs of the models, and then I'd work from the photographs. But I found that because I had learned to draw long before I started doing commercial work, I enjoyed drawing them out of my head far more than working from models. And so now, practically everything here on all these paintings, they're almost all made up. And when I do that, they become real to me. Because if I have a photograph, I'm working from a photograph, I can't get out of my mind who posed for that. But when I make up the painting, it's like making up the book. It's all comes to you. It just comes to you, and you just, and it becomes more real. I fall more in love with the paintings now than I ever did before, because they're totally out of my head. The stories, I got to write stories for every one of them. I've got a painting out in the garage now with probably 100 people in it. And each one of them has a story. Each one of them has a history and a background and a connection with other people in the painting. And it becomes a story. Now, okay, I started working for the movies. I didn't want to work in the movies. I wanted to be a New York illustrator. But somebody told me that there was some freelance work that I could get there or something. So I went to Columbia Studios and I met the director, or the art director. And he looked at my stuff and he said he'd like me to work on the movie. And I said, no. He says, what do you want to get in this business for? And I said, I don't want to get in this business. I'm looking for freelance work. And he says, well, I'd like you to work on this movie. And I said, I don't think so. I don't think I want to work. I said, could I do it at home? And he says, no, you'd have to come here in the studio. And I said, no, I don't think I want to do that. And I said, money changes me sometimes. Does it pay a lot? And he says, I'll check. And he says, it pays $250 a week. Well, this was in the early 60s. And I didn't think the President of the United States made that kind of money. But I didn't want to do it. So I said, no, I need 300. He says, okay. Oh, I said, well, on Wednesdays, the Society of Illustrators, I won't be able to get in very long on Wednesdays. He says, okay. And I said, I freelance, so I do my stuff at home at night. I probably won't be in on time in the morning. He says, okay. I thought, I can't not get this job. And I remember going home and my wife said, how did it go? I said, terrible. I got to work there. God, I don't want to work there. I don't want to work there. But I said I'd come in on Monday, and I guess I'm going to have to for a while. So I went in the following Monday, and he gave me a script of the movie, and he says, go up to the art department and read the script. Where's the art department? He told me that was. And I read the script, and he said, okay, illustrate it. Draw it as you see it. I said, just as I see it. He said, yeah, well, you got to do it in the right proportions because it's film proportion. But other than that, make it up. Just do drawings of what you're reading. Well, after a week there, I thought, if I'd had any idea what this job was, I'd been begging for it. They paid me to sit there and make up drawings. I made up drawings for years. I worked something like 25 years in the film industry.
So is that normally how it would go? They'd give you a script, you'd read the script,
Yeah.
and then come up with the poster.
Yeah. Oh no, not the posters. I was doing drawings for them. In fact, I've got some here. I'll show them to you if you want. I did drawings for cartoon drawings. All I mean, it's like for the movie. Every scene of the movie, every scene of where the film or the camera would be in the movie. So you're just drawing the movie, and it was wonderful. I just loved that. Well, then, after I finished it, I was working on another movie or something, and the director said, "I'd like you to do the ad for the movie." And the same thing, I'd make it up and I did that. And they liked it, and I thought, I could do that at home. I wouldn't have to go to the studios anymore. And so I started doing movie posters, and I did like over 200 movie posters. And I did them all at home. I didn't have to go in. Going to the studios and the movie studios in those days, it was fun, but it was like a party all the time. I mean, you get to work at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock we'd go to lunch. Sometimes we'd get back from lunch around 7 in the evening, and nobody cared. I mean, it was fun. It was very fun, and everybody was having parties. It was all the time. It was fun, but I started missing my work. I started missing the work more and more and more, and I don't want to do this anymore. It was fun for a while, but for me, fun is sitting in this room or any room and by myself, and I start out sitting in the chair and I just sit there and think of a story, and just start making up a story, and then trying to see it as a painting, start seeing it as a drawing, and then start doing some drawings, doing some sketches, and then doing more sketches, and putting it all together and making a painting. It is the most fun in the world. I always say I see it for the first time when I'm done with it, because I am not conscious in my mind. I am not conscious when I'm working. When I'm not working, I become very conscious, and I become very self-critical, and life is hard, and I just get depressed and everything else. I go back to work and I'm happy again. I'm so happy, and I've worked 10-hour days, 7 days a week for 30, 40, 50 years. I don't know, many years.
So John, it feels like that process, in some respects, is a reverse of your first Hollywood processes, where they gave you a script, you did a picture. Here, you're envisioning a picture,
yes,
and then you've got to come up with a script, the story that you're trying to tell.
Yeah, and I usually do. Sometimes I make up the story first, and then sometimes I just do the painting first. But most of the time now, that was one of so many years I had to do for movies or for book covers or whatever I was doing. You had to please somebody, and now all of a sudden, my wife was ill for a while, and I had to take care of her. And now she died, and I'm here alone, and I can do whatever I want to do. And I'm having trouble. Thinking, it's sort of hard to all of a sudden say, what do you want to paint? I don't know. Well, would you like to do some sculpture? No, I don't think so. Well, is there anything you want to do? Is there something you've ever wanted to do? No, I couldn't think of anything. But my making them up is, as far as I'm concerned, the whole excitement of the thing. I said I had to come up with an idea, and I first we were going to a Shakespeare festival, and I thought, that's a great story. So I'll do all the Shakespeare paintings. So I bought tons of books on Shakespeare, and I started reading them, and I thought, my God, it would take me a lifetime to really learn what Shakespeare is saying. so I don't want to wait that long before I start painting these pictures. So I'll find something else. And I thought maybe I'll do religion. And I looked at some religion things and I started doing a painting of that. And I thought, I don't really know that I don't want to do that. And I said, Samson and Delilah. I thought he killed 1,000 people with the jawbone of an ass. I mean, come on, I don't want to paint that. So somehow or other, somebody suggested it or I found it, and I got into mythology and I started looking at now some of these stories are silly, but I'm loving it, and I'm doing the 11 or the 12 labors of Hercules, and I've done 3 or 4 of them now. And I think that's kind of fun. I can get into that. It's a story, but it's not so much of a story that I don't get to make it up. And if you read like this, I don't know if you can see this painting, but this painting was originally done with swords, and then I reread it and found out they didn't fight with swords; they fight with spears. So I repainted that part and put spears in there. But basically, when you read the stories of all the mythological stories, they're all stories, and they're all different. You know, the same story would be told by different people, and they're told it all different. So I realized that I can do these stories, but I can change them to as much as I want to. I mean, I'm working on one now that I want to do is just sketches of Hercules turning the river he had to clean one of his labors was to change the route of a river. And I'm thinking of lifting up all these rocks and all that. I get into it. I think, well, did he do that? I don't know. I don't care. This is what I'm having fun doing this.
Being born in Wisconsin, no TV, no entertainment, artistic mother. Is that how your imagination developed?
Probably, because as I said, when we were little, my mother and my dad would sit there and read books out loud, and my sister and I laid on the floor and drew pictures as they were telling us stories in the books. And so I've been doing that forever, and I wanted to be a New York illustrator, but I remember when I was like 5 or 6 years old, thinking about, I wonder if Michelangelo was this good when he was my age. And I also wanted to be Michelangelo. I wanted to do that kind of a thing, but I just wanted to draw pictures mainly of people, but draw pictures and paintings of stories. And it's still big in my mind. Paintings for no reason at all, it doesn't interest me very much. I love to and the other thing I love to do, and this is why I love doing it from my mind rather than from models, each person that I paint is a different personality and a different, you can paint them so they become real in my mind. They become real for me, even though they're just mental. But I have names for them. I call them by the name. I talk to a lot of them. I still talk to a lot of the paintings in this house, because it's when you're making it up, it makes itself up. It's hard to say this, but when you're learning how to draw, remember before in earlier years with gar shifts, you'd learn how to drive a car by you put in the brake, you put in the clutch, and then you change the gear, and you let out the clutch and stand on the brake, and you go back, and you go through this a few things, and then pretty soon you just go to the store. You don't think about that anymore. Learning how to drive is difficult for a few weeks, but then it's just part of your nature. And painting and drawing is the same thing. When I went to art school, I took as many classes of models as I could, and because I took it as an illustration in New York in the Art Center School in Los Angeles, but I also took night classes, and I took lots of classes. So I took more modeling classes than anybody, I think. I went to New York, and I went to the Society of Illustrators, and I took modeling classes. I went to that too, and so I've drawn hundreds and hundreds and thousands of models of nude models in my mind. I know I've done it so many times. I don't need photographs anymore.
Because that was a reputation early on, is being able to absolutely nail
Yeah.
the picture of the
Anatomy.
star or whoever.
Yes, yes, and you can still do that, but now I'm not painting them anymore. I'm painting somebody that I made up, but I can make it Fat Man or I was looking at some of the pictures around here and people I've used. I like the character of the person becomes so much more important to me than anything else, and because they become real to me, and I want them to be real. I see pictures of people riding horses and looking at but they're looking at the cattle out there. They're not any particular person, they're a person. Well, I don't want to do a person. I want every person that I paint to have a history, a background. They were young, they were old, they were, they're everybody, and some people are nice and some people aren't. But you have to have the character of each one of them in the painting. And the more characters you have in the painting, the more believable it becomes. And pretty soon, you're not just, for so many years in the movies and everything else, everybody had to be gorgeous. The women had to be beautiful, the men had to be heroic looking. And now I can make them anyway. And that's one of the things I liked so much about Norman Rockwell. He did characters. He did an awful lot of characters that weren't handsome, weren't gorgeous, weren't beautiful, but they were careful, but they were interesting. They were interesting. Now I can do the same thing in my mind, and I can make them up and make up stories of people, and God, it's fun. I just love it.
You mentioned Rockwell, and so did you grow up looking at his Saturday Evening Post
yes,
covers
all of
growing
them.
up?
Yes, all of them, all the time.
So your first one that you did, that had to be a pretty special moment.
Yeah, I had to do the first one I did, I think, was of Katherine Hepburn. And I think I had to do it twice. I think I did it the first time, but I was so uptight because I wanted to do this for the Saturday Evening Post that I couldn't release, and I did a terrible painting. And so I did it over again, and I thought, I'll keep painting it over and over and over again until I get to the point where I'm not thinking, and I just let it happen. And then the second time was much, much better. But, and then I did another ones. I did it, 2 or 3 of them. Andrews, and then another one of a 1 and a 2. What's his name? Lawrence Welk, yes. He came over to my house. He had about 16 suits over his shoulder because he wanted me to decide what he should wear. And I said, well, you got a lot of suits. I said, I don't have any suits. He says, you want a suit? What, a bright red one or a bright yellow one? I said, no, thank you. I don't think so. And I thought later, you should have taken one. But, and he was a wonderful person. He had this is what happens with so many people. Some of the people that you get to meet are terrific people, particularly in actresses and actors, the older ones, the stars from the earlier period, were so nice, so very, very polite and nice and interesting, and they're just humble. I always remember doing Opie Taylor, what was his name?
Ron Howard.
Yeah, Ron Howard. And he came to my studio and he was so nice, and he called me sir, I said, would you move over here? Yes, sir, yes, sir. He did everything. I thought, you're Ron Howard, I'm only John Solie, He was so polite and so kind. I thought, this guy's wonderful. And there was a number of actors and actresses, some that weren't, but there were some that were just so wonderful, so polite and so kind, and they weren't egotistical at all. They were just very helpful. And so it's unfortunate that the actors and actresses sometimes get a reputation of being a certain way, and there are a number of them that are, but there's an awful lot of them who are really, really wonderful characters and enjoyable to work with. And they were busy people. They didn't, we didn't become friends, close friends or anything like that. But just when you worked with them, they were really, really wonderful to work with. But now that's a different world. That's when you're having to paint portrait type things. And stories that somebody else wants. Now, I could get into the stories, but it's even better if I get to make up the story. And the books, I did two of the books. Two of the books were of basically of a young boy. I thought between 12 and 15 or something like that. I wanted to do the age that he was still a child, but he was also becoming a man, becoming a person. And the girls in it were the same things. They were innocent girls, but then they were becoming, and it's a good period of time, I thought, because they have the identification of two lifetimes, right? And no one, they're of an age where they're still little kids and they're not little kids anymore. And so the book, as it happens, can grow as they grow, and it's fun to do. And it's kind of the same thing as when you read Tom Sawyer or Huckleberry Finn. You believed them. You believed the kids. They were just wonderful stories. Here's something else, and there's one thing that with books, most of the books I read and most of the movies are murder mysteries. Murder mysteries are so big. I mean, and I'm not a fan of murder. I don't like murder. I don't ever really want to do it, and I don't want it to happen. And I don't like thinking about it. And so the books I wrote, both of them, of those particular nothing bad happens. I mean, maybe real authors would look at it and say, these are boring. They're not boring to me because they're life as it is. And in life, when you're growing up at that age, when everything is new to you in a sense because you're young, but it's still exciting. And one of them was about a town where nothing happens. And it's an old Western town. It doesn't happen, nothing happens, not Western, Midwest. And it's the kids are looking at it and say, to them, things are changing all the time. My dad worked with died, and he got part of the business now, and so he's running the business, and it's different. And then somebody else comes along, they run for mayor or something, and it changes something. Now these aren't big changes. These are normal changes in life that we all put up with a lot. But nothing really much more than that happens. But to me, it is more exciting than ever because it's life on planet Earth, real life on planet Earth, not robbing banks, not murdering, not big important stories like that. It's a simple story. It's my own life. I never killed anybody, and I never robbed a bank. And I didn't know anybody who did, and we all had this life. I look back at the whole time in Wisconsin. We had a house. My folks bought a A&W root beer stand in a place called Decorah, Iowa, which is 60 some miles from La Crosse. And growing up in those years with the two towns, where nothing really happened, but it was exciting to me. I thought that was. Oh God, one time we had a root beer stand. Some bank robber from Chicago came through, and my sister and I saw him at the store, and we called the police, and the police came and arrested him. That actually happened. We were so excited about that, and then the newspaper came out and they said the chief of police figured it out. I thought, well, wait a minute, we called him. But it didn't make any difference. But something like that is so exciting, so incredible. And that was probably the most important, interesting thing that happened in the years that we had the root beer stand. And then now, growing up, I was 18 or 19 when I left Wisconsin. And high school and grade school and all of these things were full of interesting excitement. And now I still have contact with several people from high school. I don't know how they found me, and now we call each other and write to each other. And it's interesting because I think this was the most interesting time of your life. And even in California, we didn't recognize, nothing big ever happened. Nothing really, really big. You hear about it all the time on the radio and television. but your life is simple. And I want that in my drawings and my paintings too. I don't want, I did so many paintings I did Hercules, or I did Tarzan. I did Tarzan paintings. Tarzan did wonderful things and all that, but I didn't want Tarzan's life, not in my life. I wanted to know Mr. Zimmerhunkle, my teacher. He was interesting. He dug out a whole basement so that he could have a studio under his house. And
So
I used
when
to
you
go.
were in elementary and then in high school, were you really art focused all those
Oh,
4
yeah.
years?
Yes.
To the exclusion of most everything else?
Yes. To almost everything else. I was stupid on I got terrible grades. I was somewhat popular with some girls. Enough so that they would do my homework for me. So I didn't have to do it. I never read the books. I never did the homework. All I did was draw pictures. And I got away with it because people would help me out. And even the teachers, I think they knew what I was doing. They just said, no, don't pay any attention to them. And so.
And you were a little kid during World War II.
Yes.
And any memories of how that changed things?
Well, I remember one thing. There's this kid, Dale Ebner, who lived about a block away from me, and he told me one time that they had Hitler in his basement.
The imagination.
Yeah, well, it turned out it wasn't true, but at the time I thought it was. And my God, he's got Hitler in his basement. I went home, told my folks, and they just said, oh, don't pay any attention to him.
So how did you decide to leave Wisconsin and go to
Art Center School.
Art Center School?
I went to college in La Crosse, Wisconsin. And after the first semester, they put me on probation. And after the second semester, they said it'd be to their advantage and mine if I didn't come back. So I was kicked out. Because I didn't want to go to that school. That's where my dad went to college there and everything, but I didn't want to go to that school. The art teacher was ridiculous. And so I thought, well, I flunked out, don't have to go back. So I started writing to all the different, I thought the art schools in New York and in Los Angeles, and they all sent me, books on their schools and what it was going to be. And I loved the one of Art Center most of all. It turned out, so I wrote to them, and I first went back to the high school and said, please don't pass on my grades because I don't want them to know that, I don't think I ever had a report card that didn't have at least one F in it. And I remember I found a bunch of report cards when I was even younger, and where the teachers would write things about you on the back of the, and they all wrote the same things. John tends to daydream. He's not a good student because he tends to daydream. And I thought, yeah. And back then, daydreaming was an insult. That was a terrible thing to do. But I think I've made my entire life on daydreaming. And now, more than ever, because now I'm making up everything.
Did you ever reply to one of those things in the back of the comic books?
No.
You had to draw something
No,
and
draw me.
send it in?
No.
'Cause I think Moomy did. I think
No,
he
did he?
one time, I think.
No, I didn't do that. I would do drawings and the art teacher, Anthony Donald Zimmerhunkle, we called him Zimmy, he didn't like that. But he was the art teacher in junior high school. But I got him in from 5th grade because he came to my house one time to meet my parents because my sister, who was 3 years older than me, was his student, and she was very good, and he wanted to meet the parents. So I met him, and I became close friends with him. And I'd go to school, no, not him, that's another one. That's from the guy up here.
Okay.
But, and so I'd go to school with him every day. Now I remember walking to school one time, it was probably about in 5th grade, 6th grade, and we're walking down the street and he stopped me and he says, look at that tree. I said, yeah. He says, what color is it? I said, brown. He says, look again. Light brown? Look again. And I kept saying that, and I thought, well, what do you want? He says, there's every color in the rainbow is in that tree and in everything else. Look until you find it. I thought, well, now this is something that I'm in 5th grade or 6th grade. That changed my life. You know, and then I had a cousin who was much older than me, and she came back and she was visiting, and she taught me how to do drawings of orbs and how the light would hit them and how the shadows would come from them and how the cast shadows versus model shadows. And I learned a whole bunch of these things when I was just a little tiny kid, and I started doing ads for the root beer stand when I was 15, 14, 13, I don't know. And they put them in the paper, and then I got a job doing also the drawings for the paper. And I was just a little kid, so I had opportunities like this. I think my entire life was a gift. The talent was an absolute gift. The desire to develop the talent was another absolute gift.
Working 10 hours a day is discipline.
Yeah, and then the opportunities that came along. Working in the movies, I didn't want to work in the movies, but this opportunity came along, and I couldn't get out of it. And I thought later, I can't take credit for anything, because everything is a gift. My entire life has been gifts, and it still is. And I wonder if that's not true with everybody, but I can't take credit for any of my. I saw one of these. Jackie Gleason was on an old Johnny Carson show, and he was saying the same thing. He says his talent was all a gift. He says you can't take credit for it. He says it's a gift to God. You can't be, and so he had a humility because he knew he didn't do it. It was given to him, and everything in my life has been given to me. And
was your mother, who was a tolerant one of your academic accomplishments? Your mother being the more artistic one.
Yeah, well, she was an A student in school, and so was my dad. And they were not fans of mine. And my dad was not a fan of anybody going into art unless it's girls. My mother was a girl, and she could be an artist, and he was proud of that. And my sister was a girl, and she was an artist, proud of that. And some of my aunt and uncles were girls, and he's proud of that. But boys shouldn't do that. You go into sports and you do something men do, not art. I remember he was very upset with me for going into this business, but I had no choice because I didn't do anything else, and I didn't learn anything else. And I partly didn't learn anything else because I didn't want to know. I thought, I want to concentrate and learn everything I can on this. And when I was a kid, I would look at art books early in the morning, first thing, before I do any drawings. I'd study art books for at least an hour, every morning. And then I'd draw. And if I finished a drawing, I'd check with the art books and see if this is as good as that. It's not as good, I'd do it over again. And I was constantly learning because it was fun to learn. I'm a very, very lazy person who doesn't want to do anything I don't want to do. And now that sounds
it's okay
different from what
10 hours of what you want to do.
Yeah.
Now you get late 50s,
yeah.
You get on the train in Wisconsin, and you end up in LA.
Yeah.
That had to be just a...
Oh God, I remember that. I remember getting on the train to go to Los Angeles, and my parents took me to the train depot and everything. I got on the train, and we had to go to Chicago and then to California from there. And after I'd left, I thought, I didn't bother to look out of the window and wave. I was so I'm going to California to this art school. Oh God, and I remember going to the art school. Oh man, I'm telling you, the first day at art school, the class was called illustration. And you get your drawing table and drawing boards and pencils and all the things you needed that they told you to do. And then I went into this room, and I sat in this room, and this room was about to start. And all of a sudden I was sitting there, and this girl walked in. And I didn't pay any attention at first, and then she walked up onto the stage, and she dropped off her clothes. And I thought, what? it was a model. I didn't know it was to have a nude model. This was the most exciting thing for me, and I looked at that. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Oh my God. And then it turned out, Art Center School at that time, I don't know what it is now, was rated the #1 school, art school for illustration in this country. And in the world, probably, because they started another school in Europe someplace. But Art Center was the #1 school, and Joseph Morgan Henniger was the head of the illustration department. And he became a very close friend, and we were friends until he passed on. He came and visited us when we moved to Oregon. He came and lived with us for a while with his wife, and it was such an exciting thing because these people, they lived for art. They lived for it. And they understood what in your own problems, your own thinking. It was constant. It was just constant. And I didn't want anything else.
You were married at this time already?
Yeah, I got married when I was 23 or 24.
Let's talk about Shirley for a moment. Just
Oh
tell
God.
me how you met her and your 68 years
Okay,
together.
I'm going to tell you. I'll tell you how I met her, and I want to tell you about a story that I was at the MO Club, and the Mountain Oyster Club, and I came in. There's a group of people at a table, different people, and we said hello, and then I think I was with Bill Mooney. I'm not sure, and we went and sat at another table. And the people from the first table came over, and he says, I wanted to introduce you to this girl. I think, she worked in the business like you did it for a long time in the movies. I said, oh, really? I said, where did you work? She says, Columbia. Oh, I said, I worked at Columbia for a long time. I said, what did you do there? She said, I was an actress. And I looked at her, but she was wearing sunglasses. I looked at her and I said, are you Kim Novak? And she says, yes. I said, I got to tell you this story. I said, when I was young, I went to in La Crosse, Wisconsin. The Avalon Ballroom was the biggest thing. It was because we were halfway between Chicago and Minneapolis. Big bands had played there, and we had a wonderful place. And everybody went to the Avalon Ballroom on the weekends. And I was there one weekend, and I was standing at the bar, looking at the crowd of people out there, and I was talking next to somebody, and I said, oh my God, look who's here! And he says, who? I says, Kim Novak's here. And he says, where? I says, in that second booth. And he says, that's not Kim Novak, that's Shirley Johnson. I said, oh. So I went over and introduced myself to her and married her. And I told Kim that story, and she loved that story. In fact, when she was leaving, she came back to my table. She said, I wanted to come back and tell you and just thank you for marrying Shirley. And so Shirley, you can tell from the painting, she looked like Kim Novak. She was really a beautiful girl. And I have another opinion on falling in love. People think they fall in love immediately, but that isn't love. That's affection, that's attraction. Men fall in love with women because they're beautiful and they want to have sex with them. And so in the first years of our marriage, I was in love with Shirley because she was beautiful. But she was also smart, and she had a sense of humor. And she had her own opinion. Now, prior to that, I would go out with girls, and whatever I said, they agreed with. Now I'm going out with Shirley, and she doesn't agree with what I was saying. And half the time, she said, no, that's not true. That's stupid. I mean, she didn't. Now, I remember parking in front of her house after a date, and most people were making out in the car. We were in there arguing, because she had her own opinions, and she kept her opinions all the time. So we got married, and it was wonderful. But it got better and better and better. Now, as I was saying before, we were married for 62 and a half years. And Mark Twain, I was reading a book on Mark Twain where he said, it takes 20, 25 years to really fall in love. He says, when you get married to somebody, he says, in the beginning, it's just emotional, it's wants, it's desire, it's beauty, and things like that. But as time goes by, they become real, and they become more real, and it becomes a totally different thing. And now, I'd say the last 20 years, 30, 40 years of my life was far more in love. than the first years were, you know, I liked her, I loved her very much, but it was a different kind of a love. It wasn't, it was a kind of love where you're jealous of anybody else. Now, I got to the point where I would want her to have whatever she wanted, you know, because I wanted her to be happy. And it was no longer an ego thing, it was a love thing. And I feel so sorry for people who keep getting divorced, because I think they don't know that it's going to get better and better and better. And so when she did pass on, which was a year and 3 months ago, I wasn't prepared. I thought I was. We knew with hospice and everything, we knew it was happening and knew it was going to happen, but I didn't know it was going to happen. It was like my first daughter. We were living in Chicago when I first got married, we lived in Chicago and I worked in the studio there, and Cheryl got a job working for Playboy in the magazine, not the club. And she called and says, I'm on my way to the hospital, we're gonna have the baby. I said, okay, I'll be right over there. And so I went to the hospital, and you didn't go into the operating room with the wife in those days. You just waited in the waiting room, and I was waiting in the waiting room, and all of a sudden they said, Mr. Solie, could you come up here? And I walked up to them and said, this is your daughter. And I looked at this girl. I was in shock. I got on the wrong bus. I was lost in Chicago. I spent 2 weeks not knowing where I was. I was totally unprepared for this. Now, my wife had taken me to every museum. Here's what the baby looks like now, and here's where it's been, you know, and this is going to be, and then the youth, and then this comes from. For 9 months, all we did was talk about the baby. I thought I was prepared, but I was not. I was totally unprepared for this. I was so in shock. And then from then on, you know, at home, we'd middle of the night, the baby would go, oh, and I'd say, is the baby okay? You know, I mean, our whole life was about that now. And I thought, how did I not know it was going to happen? I mean, we talked about it all the time. Well, then she passed on. How did I know that she, you know, hospice, they're talking about it. She's going to die. She's not going to live that much longer. You know, well, she could be, you know, whatever. And at that last day, I remember it because I think about it every night at 8:15. At 8:15, she's laying in the bed. I've got the painting of it. I did a painting of it for hospice. And she started reaching for something. She's laying in the bed, she's reaching. I didn't think much about that. But later I heard stories about people doing that. They think they see somebody. It's a weird thing is happening in their life. And so she passed on, she died. And I was right there and I was holding her hand. And Julie, our daughter, was sitting on the other side of the bed, and she was holding her hand too. I thought, what? I didn't know this was gonna, you know. I knew it was going to happen, and I knew it was about to happen, but I just wasn't prepared for it. And it took me, well, it's been a year and 3 months now. It took me a year and 2 months, 2.5 months, well, a year and 3 months. And it's just beginning to dawn on me that she died. And who am I? I can't live my life without her. I mean, I think that's one of the problems I've had with what do you want to paint? I was always going to paint something to impress her, but she doesn't have anybody to impress. Except me. And so life is changing right now. I think that in 5 years, if I'm alive in 5 years, I could explain what this is like, the difference between this and my rest of my life. Because this has been a strange thing for me. Very difficult for me to accept it. And then, just to make sure that things don't change, I had a friend, Jim Benz. He lived we were raised together. He lived 2 doors down when I was born. He died. And then I had this really close friend in Wisconsin, Ed Sullivan, same name as the other, and he died. And then Bill Mooney died. And then I had some friends that I worked with in the movies that I really got to be close friends with, and they all died. 1 month, like 7 people that I knew died in 1 month. And
John,
now,
it doesn't look like it's showed up in your paintings, though.
well,
Except maybe in a positive way.
yeah, maybe, because all of a sudden I thought, I don't have any friends. I don't have anybody, who. Okay, I've got one friend who's lived here he's moved, bought a house not here, far from here, and we went to high school together, but I didn't know him in high school. I mean, I knew who he was, but we were never close friends. But he was twins, and he had a twin sister. They weren't identical twins, he had a twin sister, and she still lives in Wisconsin, and I just talk to her on the phone once in a while. And I see him once in a while when he's only here in the wintertime. And so, and then there's another girl who was involved with all of the students when they died. And she called me, and I checked with her. So I do talk to people like that once in a while. But basically, I really feel I'm pretty much alone. And part of me likes that, because I can work better when nobody else is around. I never paint when anybody's there anymore. When I was first married, I tried painting in front of Shirley, but she was going to watch me, so I started painting. I started doing fancy strokes and throwing things together and all that. And after she stopped, then I could erase it all out and try it over again.
Was she much of an art critic?
She didn't care an awful lot, but she cared. Yeah, she was. No.
She cared about you, though.
Yeah, but and she liked the paintings, but I got paintings of her all over the place, and she never said anything about them. I don't think she cared one way or another. I mean, she was happy that I was doing something that I loved doing.
John, if it's okay, if we can spend just a couple dedicated minutes on the poster business, because it's certainly one of the things you're most famous for. So we talk about how you got into that.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about the 200 posters you did over the 10 or 20 years. Yeah. The process, people just call and say, do a poster for this movie, or how did it work? Well, most of them, if you're doing posters for MGM, Warner Brothers, any of the big studios, Columbia, Paramount, any of them, they have a story that they want you to do, and they have the actors and actresses who are in that story, and they'll send them over to pose for you. And it was fun. I enjoyed them. But I found there's a place called New World Pictures. New World Pictures paid half of what I got in the other studios. But they let me do whatever I wanted to do. I'd go to lunch with the art director, and he'd tell me the story. He'd tell me the story, and while he's telling the story, I'd draw on a napkin. And he'd approve it, and I'd go home and do the painting. And sometimes I had the actors and actresses pose for me, sometimes I didn't. But I had a lot of freedom with those. I liked doing, they didn't pay as well, but I had total freedom to do whatever I wanted to do. Were some of your favorite posters with New World?
Yeah, because I had total freedom. I could paint it, I love that.
Any of them stick out in your mind?
Oh, no.
Now that you like your favorite babies?
No, because I was doing so many of them. The only problem with doing posters and doing paintings for things, there's time limits on things. Like I did, one time I got there was a movie poster, Michael Douglas. It was, I think, one of his first main movies where he was a big star. What's the name of it? I can't remember it now. But anyway, I got the job. They called me one time at 9 o'clock at night, and they sent all the stuff over that I needed for it, and they wanted it at 10 o'clock in the morning. I said, I didn't get the job until 9 o'clock at night. They wanted it at 10 o'clock in the morning. So I did it. I had it ready for them in the morning. And I mean, I didn't even stay up all night. I did the whole thing in about 3 hours, I think, something like that. But you can't develop it. Oh, that was another one. I like this story. I did this thing. It was for Michael Douglas. He was a nice person. But then they sent executives from the studio over to my studio, and they were going to make some changes on this thing. They made a lot of changes, but they were executives, so they didn't talk to me, because you're only the artist and I'm an executive. And so they'd say, I think it should be redder over in that corner. I said, do you want it to be redder over in that corner? They'd say, I think you should make it redder. They'd only talk to each other. They wouldn't talk to me. I mean, they did say to me, coffee, cream, sugar, but other than that, they wouldn't talk to me about anything. And they made changes and changes and changes, and it was all because I'd listened to what they told this other person, and I would do it. And I made all these changes, and it went on for close to a week of changes. And they finally finished it, sent it back. Michael Douglas looked at it and he says, why'd you change it? I liked it the first time. Make it like it was. So I ended up repainting it to look like it did at 10 o'clock in the morning for one night work. And that's
I would imagine the executives, none of those had an art degree.
No, but they all know everything. And if there's that level, you're not of our level. We don't talk to you, And that was not, I mean, there was a lot of that in Hollywood, but there was an awful lot of fair and honest and loving people too. So, and I always thought that was a funny one. They wouldn't talk to me on the cream, sugar, other than that, no more.
So you got to meet a lot of stars.
Yeah.
Because you would paint them all in person for the.
No, I'd do photographs of them and then paint them because they didn't
say that.
Yeah, they long no. And a lot of them I got from send me a stack of photographs from the movie, and so a lot of times I had enough pictures of them, I didn't need them. And so they didn't always pose for me, but if they did, so, as I say, a lot of them were really, really friendly, happy, nice people, good people.
Good. Was Howard out there doing the same thing at that time, turpning?
No, he was never there. He did it from New York.
Okay.
And he didn't do that many posters, but he did a lot of them. He did some. In fact, I did one painting. They gave me a painting that was all partly done. They said, we want the whole center part done over again. So I did the other whole thing over again. There's a bunch of people and all that, and I put them in there. I found out later that Howard had painted the first part of the painting. So Howard had painted half the painting and I painted half the painting. But I didn't even know him then. I mean, I didn't know him personally. Well, I could, and I could show you what I did in the movies for a while before. They were just little sketches, little drawings. I've got some in the other room.
That's when you were illustrating the.
Yeah, you illustrated the story, and oh God, it was fun to do that.
Would they use those on the storyboards?
These became storyboards. Okay. Yeah, and there was one. The other illustrators at first they found out that I was making $300 a week, and I had never worked in the movies before, and they did not like me, and I had to learn how to measure for the whatever screen you're doing it for, and there's ways, and they'd give you a blueprint of a room, and then you had to take the blueprint and draw a picture of it, what it would look like when it was built, and so you had to learn how to change a blueprint to an actual painting, and it had to fit the format of the film. And there was a bunch of things that you had to learn how to do certain ways. And Lyle Wheeler, who was the art director on this, I think he had 9 Academy Awards or something like that. He was really good. And he said, just ask one of the other illustrators, they'll show you how to do it. Well, and they wouldn't talk to me. And then one guy, Jim Reynolds, who is an illustrator that people know around here.
Famous painter, Jim Reynolds.
Yeah. after everybody else, I talked to every illustrator there, and they would not talk to me. They would not look at me. They would not talk to me, and they were not going to tell me how to do. They didn't want, you don't know how to do what we do, and you're getting more money than we. So Jim Reynolds says, "Okay, I'll give you 10 minutes," and I learned everything I needed to know in 10 minutes. I knew I had to learn it right then because he wasn't going to say it twice. But he's the only one who taught me how to do it, and I learned how to do all of this stuff. So from then on, I worked doing a lot of paintings that were in, the art director would design the set, and then I would do a painting of the set and all the and the pictures on the wall and all of the furniture and all that. And then he would take that painting to the director and say, "This is how it would look." And the director would say, "I like this moved over here," But that was it, and so we were really working, we were developing and making the movie. And it was just the fun part, the sets and all of that. And
you're an incredible integral part to this.
Yeah, it was so much exciting. It was fun because you could, in fact, sometimes I've tried to I change the script sometimes a little bit, but not too much because they, if they find out, they don't want you to do that. But you had the freedom in the beginning to decide how things, and there's so many things. Like I said, I did something like 200 movie posters. Of those 200 movie posters, you know how many movies I saw? Maybe 2. I don't know if I even saw those. I never went to see the movies.
There's only disappointment can happen.
Yeah, I almost never saw the movies of the paintings that I was doing, because I was doing them so fast. One of them, I think I did see this one, but it was they did a movie, the painting of what's the name of that movie? The painting gets old, and the guy, the star of the movie is mean, but he stays young, and the painting gets older and older and older.
Dorian Gray?
Dorian Gray, and we did it for a film. They did it for, they had done it originally a movie, and then they were doing it for television. They wanted me to do the paintings. So I got to do all the paintings of the actor getting older and older and older and getting really weird. And I enjoyed doing that, and I did see that movie. But most of the movies, I never went to see them. And
as a very accomplished illustrator yourself, and growing up in the Illustrator magazine world, where you would have Field and Stream or any of those magazines,
yeah.
Who did you look to early on? N.C. Wyeth and Russell and Remington?
Oh, God, all of them.
All of them?
Yeah, Wyeth, N.C. and Andrew and his son. Everything from, I'm thinking of all of the paintings, and I'm trying to think, okay, what's their name? I can't think of the names, and it's my memory going bad on me here. But God, there were a lot of illustrators at that time, and that were really, really quite good. And I met a lot of them when I go back to New York, because they were all, working there, and that was exciting. That's it's exciting to meet people who you've been a fan of for so long, but usually back in those days too, it was more like, here is particular you can make. I'd like to introduce you to. Hi. I would be so taken back by him, I wouldn't talk. I wouldn't know what to say.
Let's talk about when you moved to Oregon and how you found out that the world had gone digital, that illustrators were on were on life support.
Yeah, well, I was in Oregon for a while, and now the illustration department at the Columbia Studios had a meeting, and they decided, whoever was running the meeting says, look, we're selling film, and we should sell it with film. We shouldn't use illustrators anymore for our movie posters. And he talked them out of ever using illustrators anymore. And then the other studios went along with it too, so they stopped. Everything was done with film from then on. And so I had done like 200 movie posters, and I was doing them all the time. All of a sudden, no more work.
Did you think the new movie posters were better than the ones that you had done? I would think not.
Oh, I don't know. I never looked. I didn't pay any attention. And I was kind of, you kind of, I was ready to get away from Hollywood anyway, and so I went to New York and I got an agent there, and it turned out to be the same agent that Howard had. And I started doing mainly books, and I did Reader's Digest condensed books. I illustrated some of those. But then I started doing book covers, and I did a couple hundred book covers, and I don't know why I'm telling you this. What was the question? I think I went.
No, how did you find out that illustrators weren't going to have too much work?
Oh, I was working in Oregon, and talked to one of the publishers, and they said, we're sending you some work, some paintings, or some photographs or ads for book covers. I said, okay, fine. And a week or two passed and didn't come up. So I called and they said that it hasn't showed up. I didn't get any. They said, oh, we'll be sending them to you. We'll be sending them to you. Don't worry about it. A couple more weeks. And it ended up seeming like a month or two. And I called them again and they said, oh, we're not doing that anymore. We're doing it with computers now. And they're not, it was over. And I didn't realize my work was over. And when you're living in Oregon on the coast, 3 acres on the coast with 3 buildings, you got to make money. I mean, it's not free to live there. And so I said, well, I'll start doing I started doing portraits, and I got an agent in somewhere in the South. I can't remember where exactly. And so I started doing portraits, but I was on an airplane all the time. And because the people in the South bought portraits, but nobody else did. So I was constantly going back there and doing portraits. Well, I had an agent there who, like most agents, was a criminal. And sometimes I would do the painting and he wouldn't pay me. And one time I did a painting of a family and they didn't pay for any of it. And I said, well, they're not, what am I going to do? They're not going to say, well, you can go to Mississippi and get a lawyer. I thought, I can't do that. So I thought, well, I don't really want to do portraits anymore anyway, because I've got a whole book of stuff of portraits, and they did for a while. But portraits were, if you don't really know the person, they become whatever you look like in a photograph. And so it's, and I think it was some famous artist who said, when you do a portrait, you did a portrait of some woman, she said, I think you made my neck too green. And he says, oh, you're right. It does need more green in the neck. And he put more green in it. He says, because pictures of people are people who look at them and then, well, is my nose like that? Are my eyes that color? I don't think, my hair doesn't look,
Those trips to the South, is that where you did the beautiful sculpture of Bojangles?
No, I did that in California, and I got a job. I just did it because a friend of mine had done a film, music, a record of Bojangles, and I loved the record, so I did it just from the record. I did the sculpture, and I had never done a sculpture before, but that was so much fun. And so I did that behind you, that sculpture of Bojangles. And then I started every once in a while doing more sculptures, just fun things, little things. But then I got a job doing sculptures for a wax museum in Tokyo. And they sent me to Japan. And I went I worked in Japan for months doing sculptures of different characters that they would then cast in wax and add the hair and all that. But it was kind of fun. I really enjoyed doing sculptures. I came back from doing sculptures. This was back when I was doing still from the movies. And my first job for the movies was doing a sculpture for something else, for some movie that I did. I thought, this is fun. So then CVS did a show of, one year they hired me to do 30-some paintings and a sculpture of Walter Cronkite. I got it in the other room, or I've got one of them in the other room. And so it was, doing sculptures was fun. And it's still fun, but it's so much, it's a lot easier than painting. It takes more time because it's complicated to just keep working on painting or sculptures. But a sculpture is much easier than a painting. You're working on a sculpture, and if something's wrong, you turn it. And you say, oh, I can see what I did. Oh, you can fix things easily. A painting, if it's there and something's wrong, there's no changing it. You got to figure out what's wrong from that one point of view. So sculpture is fun, a little, as I say, a little easier. And I didn't do it. I tried one in stone one time. I was going to do a marble sculpture. And I went up to Big Bear in California, and I rented a cabin, and I was going to just do the sculpture. And I would every day, and ching, 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 ching. It's kind of fun. And then I saw a line, right, a very thin line. I put the thing in there, and click, and the whole front of the thing fell off. So I went home and gave up on doing stone. You got to know a lot more about the stone than it's not just doing it in the stone. So doing it in clay is easy and it's fun, and I still enjoy it once in a while. But and I did several of my wife. I do everything with my wife, and I still do occasional sculptures. But I think painting is more fun. You get into these, everybody's had this experience where I love movies. I like to go to movies, and then a month later, I don't want to go to movies. I don't want to go to plays. I like plays better. And then I don't want to go to plays. I want to read a book. And, your desire changes. And so I can't say that I won't get into sculpture again. Maybe I will sometime. But right now, I think, yeah, it's nice, but I'd much rather do paintings.
John,
Drawings
if a
and
middle
paintings.
school kid's watching this, and they're likely to at some point in time, what do you want to tell the middle school kids?
Be polite to your teacher.
Good advice. Good advice.
Pretend you did the job. What I would think and I think this is a difficult thing if you're for people who decide they want to go into art when they're 25 years old. I think it'd be very difficult because it's something that when you do as a child, you see, it's a lot harder nowadays because there's TV. You can't get away from television, and computers. My God, you can see things on a computer. I don't think the desire is the same. When I was young, the only real entertainment was drawing and painting pictures. Drawing mainly, and I would like to teach people that. But if they can do computers, and if they can do movies, and they can do television and all that stuff, they're not going to want to do it. I think pretty much it's a lost art. I'm sorry about that because I think they're missing out on what I think is the most fun in the world. But I think it's changed. I think times have changed so much. I would love it if they loved it and if they got into it and cared. And I think if the gift was given to them like it was given to me, they'll do it, still do it. It doesn't make any difference whether it's television or not.
They have to do it.
Yeah. And so those people, I think, follow your bliss. Do what you want to do. Just do it and try it. And if you want to, you can draw or paint different kinds of things, different kinds of people, different kinds of situations. It's, I'll tell you something, I've looked at some of these comic books, and I think I would have enjoyed being a comic book illustrator, because that's kind of what I was doing in the movies in those early years, but I didn't have to finish them as much as they did. There were some very, very good illustrators doing comic books.
Stanley is a...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, really good. And for Frazetta, Frank Frazetta. Wonderful things. And I think they obviously know how to draw the figure too, as well as any, because they draw it in every position they want to. And you don't usually find artists who know how to draw paintings, draw illustrations of figures that well, because they've got models, they've got photos. But those illustrators for a book or for magazines, illustrations, they had to turn out 10 a day. I'm sure they were doing them fast, and you don't have time to study meditation is a wonderful thing. Any time that you can sit and think and not judge anything, just think whatever your thoughts that come through your mind. And if you can do that, sooner or later, things will come to mind. And when they do, and sometimes it takes a while, writer's block or whatever it is. I've had times when I've come over here to the studio and sit there for 2 or 3 days and couldn't come up with anything. But usually it does. You daydream what you want and it will eventually create itself. And all you got to do is sketch it and draw it. And I do sketches, I use, I don't know if I have them around here, the carpenter pencils, the flat carpenter pencils. And I do quick drawings with those. And then I sometimes take clearer, better pencils and I correct the drawing. And then I take a ballpoint pen and I do the drawings over those things. And then I can erase off all the pencil and it looks like you just draw it out of your head perfect the first time. But it's a development kind of a thing. You develop just very sketchy, sort of get it, and then you tighten it, you fix it, and you fix it, and you fix it, and you fix it. And pretty soon, you can't do it any better than that, and it's good. And it's so much fun.
Again.